So thanks to those of you who participated in the Mentimeter. This was just kind of a quick little poll so I could see who was in the room. So I see we have lots of classroom teachers, a couple librarians, a couple technology coaches, and an administrator. So thank you guys for coming. I will switch back to my presentation. The one that is on the P&C website is kind of a bare bones presentation. So I do have a QR code that you can scan if you want more information than the things that are listed on the website. So the presentation that I'll show you today and the one that's linked here has links to things, a lot more than I have in the one that I actually put on the P&C website. Because I don't know about you guys, but I always look and see, and if somebody posts their whole presentation, I don't go to their session because I already have what I need. So that's the reason why I did that. But thank you guys for coming. As everybody's going to accessing that, I'll just give you a little background on me and introduce myself. My name is Sarah George, and I work for Mechanicsburg Area School District, which is in central Pennsylvania, not far from Harrisburg. And Mechanicsburg is the kind of town that has changed a lot in the last 15 years. 15 years ago, it was a very homogeneous farm town. Now, not so much. We have a very diverse student body, more than 60 languages spoken, and we have a very large Somali population. So that influx of that particular group has caused a lot of changes in our school system to address their needs and their culture. And I've worked for Mechanicsburg for 12 years. I was a kindergarten teacher for 8 years in a kindergarten-only building. I helped to start that program. And then 4 years ago, the library position opened up in my district, so I moved to that. And I've been a K-5 librarian over the past couple of years. We've done some shuffling of grade levels and such, and so right now I'm teaching first, second, and third grade library, and then I also serve as the library department coordinator, so I oversee all the libraries in the district. So I've learned a lot about secondary in the past 2 years, but my heart is definitely with elementary. So I'm a big believer in growing your PLN, so my Twitter handle is up there. We also have a department hashtag that we use on Twitter, MASD Library, so you can see different things that are happening in libraries throughout our district. And then on Instagram, I post occasionally, mostly for parents, the things that are happening in my 2 buildings that I am primarily responsible for, which is Broad Street and Upper Allen. I will also have this slide at the end of the presentation, so if you missed it, I'll show it again. So when I moved from being a kindergarten teacher to being a librarian, one of the things that I really thought about was taking my students beyond my classroom. Because as a kindergarten teacher, I'll admit, I was primarily worried about what they were doing in the room, and we didn't connect a lot to other classrooms. But as I moved to the library, my world broadened, and that kind of changed the way I looked at things. So I think sometimes people have kind of the view that elementary students aren't ready to connect beyond their classrooms, and I think that's false. Nowadays, our students are connecting with people outside of their families, outside of their classrooms all the time, and whether we like it or not, they're doing it. So I think we really need to address this issue in our classrooms and in our libraries and in our schools. So since you guys are here, I would imagine you guys probably agree with many of these points. So the world today is a collaborative place. It's our job to make sure that we are teaching students how to use these tools that are available to them, because if we're not teaching them how to use these various tools and technologies, they're figuring it out, but maybe not making the choices that we would hope for them to make. So our classrooms need to be not just our physical rooms, they need to be a lot larger nowadays. As a librarian, I am a huge proponent of teaching about digital citizenship. And while I take primary responsibility for that in my buildings, I should not be the only person teaching digital citizenship. I tell my teachers, if you are putting a device into students' hands, or if you are using a device in front of them, you should be talking about digital citizenship. They should be hearing it across the curriculum, across their day, all the time, because it is such a huge part of their world. And we have the unique ability at elementary that we can provide experiences where we can support students through those first experiences. So they're not doing it totally on their own, they're doing it in a supportive environment where we can do things like moderate comments. And then the other thing is just the kids love connecting with other classrooms. It is so engaging to them. when we have experiences in the library or in students' classrooms where we're connecting with another classroom, many times students tell me those are their favorite days. Those are the days they remember. Those are the days that they want to replicate and duplicate. And a huge part of this too is it provides an authentic audience. And you know, as many of you know, finding that audience for elementary can sometimes be hard. But nowadays we're lucky that there are lots of technologies that can help us find authentic audiences for our students in ways that are still safe. So the way that I have this presentation set up is I have specific projects that happen on specific dates, and then I have projects and experiences that can happen anytime. For all of these different things, you need to have people to connect with. So you need to have other classrooms that you can connect your kids to. So 2 different ways that you can kind of go about this. People you know, people you don't know yet. So people you know could be family members, could be classmates. Maybe your college roommate is still teaching in another state or in another county. Connect with her again. Maybe it's friends of friends. One of my first experiences that I did with a 5th grade class in the library, I know my cousin, who's much younger than me, goes to this awesome school in Nashville, Tennessee. So I sent my cousin an email and said, hey, do you think there'd be a teacher at your school who'd want to connect? She's like, sure. She sent me her email. I emailed her, and we were good to go. So you can kind of use those connections that you have, your kids' teachers, you know, nieces and nephews, like I said, people that you went to college with, people that you did your master's program with. They can be great places. And for a lot of my teachers who may not be as brave and bold to do some of these experiences with strangers, connecting with someone they know, or at least someone they kind of know, can often make the experience a little less scary for the first time. And then, of course, people you don't know yet. So many of the projects that I'll share with you today have Facebook groups or hashtags that are associated with them. And so that's a great way to find people to connect with that are at your grade level, or maybe you are looking for a specific part of the country or a specific language. Those types of social media platforms can be great ways to find teachers and classrooms to connect with. Skype is another great way. They actually have on their website, they've set up ways for you to connect with other people. And then I've had some good success with kind of the cold call / email / tweet. So an example of this would be I had a 4th grade class who was really, really interested in marine biology. So I kind of did some searching on my own. I found a marine biologist who specialized in what this class really loved. And I found their email address on the college website where they worked. And I emailed them, and the professor said, sure, I would love to talk to these students. And it was just a cold email. We emailed back and forth a couple of times, and it was a fantastic experience. So there are experts out there waiting to talk to students, and sometimes you just have to be the one to call them or email them or tweet them. And very often they will say yes. So when we talk about connecting with other classrooms, and I talk to teachers about this, because one of the things that's unique in my role as a librarian in Mechanicsburg is the expectation in my district that if I have empty periods where I'm not teaching a specialist class, that I be collaborating with classroom teachers. So I push into classrooms and do experiences and do lessons of various kinds. Sometimes classes will come to me for an extra library time. But my goal is always to do experiences with teachers and kind of give them the confidence to be able to run with this idea and do it on their own. And often what my teachers say is, I just don't have enough time. I've got so many things I need to do. I have too much to teach. There's no way I can fit this in, because it does take time. And so kind of what I always say back is that it can definitely be a part of what you're already doing. It should not be a standalone experience that connects to nothing. So whatever your content is, you can find ways to connect with other classrooms in ways that are meaningful. And it's definitely a way to enhance what you're teaching and should not be just a standalone experience for kids. I also have some teachers that tell me they don't know where to start. They're overwhelmed, and I totally understand that. I've been a classroom teacher for 8 years. I know how it is in the day-to-day grind. So most districts have resources set up to help you. I know every district is different in the way that they set up roles and things like that. If you have a librarian, use your librarian. If you have an instructional tech coach of some sort, use that person. Reach out to them and say, hey, I really want to try a mystery Skype, or I really want to try doing global read aloud. Can we work together on this? very often it can just be the person down the hall. One of the things that I'm finding now 4 years into this role is it's often my new teachers who are fearless and are thrilled to do this kind of stuff, and the veteran teachers sometimes are a little more apprehensive. And so what I found success with is I kind of pair them up, whether they realize it or not, and often, the younger teacher feels more comfortable doing the techie part of it, and the veteran teacher can take the lead on the teaching part of it. And those kind of partnerships kind of grow organically, but they can be a great way to make these experiences happen as well. But again, just use your resources. If you have a principal who loves technology, loop your principal in, have them help you with some of these experiences as well. So before we get into the specific projects and ideas, just some things to think about, because as you guys know, anytime you're using technology with students, and especially if you are connecting with someone outside of your walls, things can happen. So depending on how your district or your school has set up your network, you may run into some challenges like firewalls or blocked sites. I've run into some issues where a school I'm trying to connect with, for example, blocks Skype. Sometimes it's as simple as that other teacher emailing their tech department and they unblock it for them. Sometimes that's not an option. So for the video conferencing experiences that I'm going to talk about, Zoom is a great alternative. Zoom is nice because if you set up a Zoom meeting, it emails the other participant and all they have to do is click on the link. So that can be a way to kind of get around Skype being blocked. Many schools now obviously are Google schools, so Google Hangout can be a good option as well. When you are doing experiences with other classes, just thinking about how you have your computer set up. So placing it in a spot where students could come up and talk to the other class. Placing it in a spot where the other class can see your students, or maybe you want to turn it a little so they can't see the whole class all the time. Those are things to think about. Having the speakers set up so that everyone can hear. A microphone can be helpful, but is not necessarily required. Just things to think about. One of the other things that I think is really important is when we think about student privacy. And as a librarian and as a parent, this is kind of a sore spot for me because I know a lot of teachers get excited about these experiences, they want to share them, and they snap a picture of that other class, clear as day, and they post it on their Twitter. You probably don't know which of those students have photo permissions. You don't know what's going on in their lives and in their families. So it's always better to err on the side of caution, whether it's your own students or the students you are connecting with. And I like to do things like take pictures from the back. Or there are some apps like Prisma is one that comes to mind where you can conceal student identities by adding a filter. Like Prisma makes it look kind of artsy, so it looks like a painting, so you can't really tell who students are. And then kind of the old standby is just adding the emoji sticker over the faces can be something else to consider. But that's just something that I think sometimes teachers don't necessarily remember to think about. They're so excited about this great experience their students just had, and they post the picture, and that may not always be the best thing to do. So for specific dates, what I've done is I've started with projects that are coming up soon, and then I've gone all the way back around to projects that will be happening like on Valentine's Day. So the first few are things that it's not too late to do. One of my favorites to do in the spring is March Book Madness, and this is basically like a basketball style tournament where you have 16 books and students vote on their favorites until there is a champion. So this started in 2010 by a couple of teachers, I believe they're in Indiana. Tony Kiefer and Scott Jones are their names, and every year they pick 16 picture books, 16 middle grade novels, and then 16 young adult novels. And the last couple of years they've had a theme. So this year's theme is Brave and Bold, and so all of the stories are newer stories that fall into that category. And they're very mindful about having diverse selections and own voice selections and things like that. What I do in my schools is I try to read as many of the books as I can in the library, and then they actually vote in their classroom. So Scott and Tony will send a link to a Google form, and classes can just vote right on the Google form. And one of the best things that comes from this is just the conversation, because the past couple of years, when it gets down to the final two, students are often really passionate about which one they think should win. And the past 2 years, the winning book was not the one that my students chose. And so that becomes a great conversation point of, it's not just our school voting, these are students from all over the country voting, and they may have different opinions than you do. And if for nothing else, it becomes a great list of books that you might want to consider either getting from your library or from the local library. Really great titles that students need to be hearing. And then I have kind of the Twitter and the hashtags and everything linked in the presentation. Another fun one that takes place in the spring is called Awesome Squiggles, and this one's in April. This one is really neat because it's for pre-K through 12th grade, and each year the people who came up with this idea give you access to a document, usually a PDF. It looks something kind of like this. This was last year's. And everyone participating in the project uses the same squiggles to create something. So I love linking this with art class, and so the art teacher and I usually collaborate to do this. Sometimes we've done it digitally, sometimes we've done it, just physical coloring and drawing. And one of the really cool things about it is that the website down here is where you can register, but it also connects you to another class if you wish. So you can participate purely by having your students do it. Maybe you post a few of theirs on social media and that's it. Or if you want to take it to another level, you can sign up to Skype with another class. So you can choose, do I want to Skype with the same grade level? Do I want to Skype with a different grade level? It gives you lots of options. But it's just a neat way to see how students can create. And because students are all different ages, the types of art they create are very, very different. But that's kind of a quick, really easy one. And again, like I said, I like to link it to their art class that they're having. And I've also had a couple teachers who have taken the artwork that the students create and then they have them write about it and writing about Skyping with another class. Dot Day is usually the one that most elementary school teachers know about. Is it safe to assume you guys all know about Dot Day? Okay. So this is probably the most famous. There's lots and lots and lots of resources out there. And I would kind of challenge you guys, if you do Dot Day in your classroom in your school, maybe take it a step further and this September connect with another school. Share what you created. Share what inspired you. Have the kids interact with each other in a different way. Global Read Aloud. How many of you guys do Global Read Aloud? Okay, a couple here. So this is another one of my absolute favorite projects. So the Global Read Aloud was started in 2010 by Pernell Rip, who is actually a middle school teacher, and she is a highly accomplished speaker and writer. And what she does is she selects a picture book study, an early reader book, a middle grade novel, and then a young adult novel each year. And there's kind of been this huge growth in this Global Read Aloud community over the last couple of years. And I love that it's in like October-ish, because that seems to be a really great sweet spot where you've kind of gotten past the beginning of the year. Hopefully you have some routines established with your class. And it's still early enough in the year that if you connect with a class with the Global Read Aloud, maybe you connect with them all year long. I had a third grade teacher last year who just ran with this, and her class was reading the early reader selection 2 years ago. And we found a connection for her on Twitter. It was another class in Ohio, I believe. And the Global Read Aloud was the start of their conversations, and it just continued on from there. They became a class that they interacted with once a week. And sometimes they were talking about a special event that happened at their school. The students in the school in Ohio did not have any Muslim students in their school, whereas my school has lots of Muslim students. So it became a teaching opportunity where our students shared a little bit about their family and their religion and their culture with the other school. So it was just a great kind of start to lots of meaningful learning that happened throughout the year. These are last year's selections. She has not finalized the ones for this coming school year. But if you follow her on social media, then she'll be posting lots of updates and things as she makes the decision. This particular project really lives on Facebook. So there's always kind of a broad Global Read Aloud Facebook group, and then there's Facebook groups for each of the different books categories. So this is the easiest place to find connections. Like, people will set up postcard exchanges and pen pal exchanges, Skypes, It can kind of be as small or as big as you want, and the foundation of it is you pick which one you want to participate in, and then there's a schedule. So this past year for Stella Diaz, she published a schedule and said, okay, week 1, which is these dates, read chapters 1 through 4. So you can connect with another class, talk about your reactions to the book, etc., and then you just follow the schedule and keep going. So it's a really, really powerful way to connect, and it has so many links to literature and culture and all different things. So it's definitely one of my favorite projects and my teacher's favorite projects as well. I have kind of gotten in the routine where I do the picture book study in the library during their library classes for 1st and 2nd grade. And then for 3rd grade, I support them to read the chapter book in their classroom, because it's not really feasible when I only see kids once every 6 days to do the chapter book with them, but I support teachers to do that. I actually buy them a copy of the book out of my budget. I often will help them arrange Skypes, things like that. Global Maker Day this past year was October 29th. It's usually right around there. And this one is a really fun one where they post challenges about a week before, and you just have your kids create whatever it is that the challenge calls on them to create that year. This one is a little bit more challenging because you only have about a week lag time to gather your materials and get ready. But it's pretty high level, high quality challenges. It's not the kind of things that you can just search on Pinterest and find. So if your school has an interest, or maybe you have a movement to kind of go more maker, this might be one to think about. And again, it's another opportunity just to Skype with another class, to connect with them in some way. Read for the Record happens at the beginning of November. This one is awesome for preschool and kindergarten classes. Each year they pick a book, and you just register and say how many students you read it to that day. So they keep account of how many students participated. It's another kind of really low stress, easy way to participate in something like this. Global School Day of Play. Do any of you guys do this one? Oh, okay, so what? Would you mind sharing, how does your school do Global School Day of Play?
We actually just do the global, we changed it to global hour of play.
Yeah.
Global day of play just because a day was,
Yeah.
we felt was too much. But yeah, it's unstructured play. They can't use technology. They can bring in toys from home if they want to. But
Yeah, and my schools kind of did the same thing. We don't do an entire day. We do, I think, my one building did 2 hours, my one building did an hour and a half. It was kind of principal decision. But the idea of it is that there's a specific day that's chosen at the beginning of February, and students from around the world just have some time at school where they play. And there are forms on the website with letters to parents and things, and the basic idea is that students can bring a toy in to share that doesn't use technology, and of course follows school policies about things. And then they just share their toy and they play for a little while. And the teacher is kind of supposed to stand back and just kind of watch what's going on. But it's a really fun day, and it's very novel for the kids to have that kind of time at school to play and interact in a different way. And it's a great place to Skype with another class. It's a great way just to share what's happening in your school and your social media and things like that. So it's a really fun, easy way. And that particular one seems to be most successful when it becomes a school-wide, or at least a grade level-wide kind of initiative. Virtual Valentine's Project just happened this year, and it is a project where you can register on the website and you can exchange Valentines with another class. And this is another one of the projects where it has 2 different levels of participation. You can just share, and so they kind of match you with a participating classroom, or you can do level 2, which is where they actually help you set up a Skype with that other class. They do have a Facebook group that if you're a level 2 teacher, they'll invite you to kind of coordinate everything. But so many elementary schools do Valentine's Day activities anyway, and this is a great chance to take it to that next level. So those were projects that have specific dates. The next few that I'm going to share with you are ways that you can connect with classrooms anytime. I've touched on a few kind of here and there as we've been chatting. So Skype is one of the most powerful tools I think we have in education nowadays, because it allows kids to just see outside of their school, their community. I would imagine many of you have students that are kind of like my students, that they don't ever really leave our town. And so sometimes it's hard for them to imagine a world outside of that. And in our situation, we have students who are refugees, and we have students who kind of come from very, very different backgrounds, and so just their experiences are so different. So Skype can be a really powerful tool to give all students, regardless of their backgrounds, some experiences that they may not have outside of school. So Skype in the Classroom is a website that Microsoft has set up where you can search for experts, you can search for authors, and you can connect with other classrooms. I find their website to be really clunky and kind of hard to navigate. So give yourself some time if you decide to try this, just to find what you need, because it is a little bit clunky. But there are some fantastic experts in there. If you are teaching a science unit, chances are there is a scientist in Skype in the classroom who's willing to talk to your students. If you are reading a book that is set in another country, chances are there's a teacher in that country who would be willing to connect with your students. It takes a little legwork on your end to find those people, but it can be a hugely powerful experience. Kate Messner is an author, and she has done a lot of the legwork for all of us. She has a curated list on her website of authors who will Skype for free. And so what I typically do in the spring, right about now, is I email 10 or 15 authors and say, I would love to Skype with you in the fall. Do you have any availability? So I always do 10 or 15 because they fill up quickly because they're on this list. So you have to plan ahead of time. But when I email 10 to 15, I usually get 2 or 3 yeses, which is perfect. That works for me. One of the challenges that we run into, I had a couple teachers who were so excited to do an author Skype, and they're like, no, I've got it, Sarah, I can handle it, I don't need your help. And so I kind of let them go, and they forgot to talk about time zone. So they were connecting with the author, and the author wasn't even awake yet. So make sure you talk about things like time zone. If you live somewhere that does daylight savings time or not, that can kind of impact. So it's always a really good idea, a couple of days before you do an experience with students, test it, connect with them for just a couple minutes, make sure you can hear them, they can hear you, make sure your video works, because it's much better to troubleshoot those things ahead of time instead of having 25 kids looking at you, wondering what's going on. So that is just kind of something to think about. Skype also has some really cool events, and the link on here actually takes you to their archived events. Back, I think it was last spring, they had a special event with Jane Goodall. And so there was someone interviewing her, and you could Skype in and you could watch the interview, and then they had a chat feature where students could ask questions. So I sat in with a 3rd grade class to do this, and Jane Goodall actually answered one of their questions, which just blew their minds. They thought it was the coolest thing. So the archived ones are there. There's some really neat things that they do each year that you can access for free year-round. Mystery Skype. Has anybody ever done a mystery Skype? Okay, so we have a couple of people. Mystery Skype is where you connect with another class. They talked about it at the keynote yesterday. The teachers know the location of each class, but the kids don't. This works best if your students know some basic geography. So in my district, it works best in 5th grade because they've had some instruction on states and rivers and oceans and things like that. I had a 2nd grade teacher who really wanted to do Mystery Skype, and he set a goal for his class that they were going to do 50 in 1 year, which was a pretty lofty goal on some of your faces. But he had to do a lot of work to teach his students states and direction words and things like that so that they could be successful. They were, but it took a ton of work for him to get them to the point where they could be successful. So 4th and 5th grade kind of seems to be the sweet spot for this. And the students take turns asking yes or no questions. It's great to plan ahead and do some practice questions ahead of time. Like, think about what would be a really smart opening question. Should I ask a question like, are you in Louisiana as my first question? No, because chances are they're not. So it's much smarter to ask a question like, are you east of the Mississippi River? Because then you can eliminate a whole bunch of states. And that takes instruction and practice for students to be able to do. But it's really powerful and fun for the kids to be able to do this kind of game, but then I always would try to allow for at least 15 or 20 minutes extra time, because once we figure out where you are, I want my students to talk to you about, like, what's it like in your town? Like, what is the student body like where you live? What makes your town famous? Those sorts of things. That conversation at the end is in a huge way the most important part. What is your class reading? What books are we reading? What are we loving right now? For Mystery Skype, the most success I've found is just by typing on Twitter, like, hey, I'm looking for a 5th grade class on Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock Eastern time. Let me know if you're available. Being super specific about when we're available, and that seems to work the best. So Mystery Skype with the location works best with slightly older elementary kids. Mystery Letter, sorry, I'm just doing a quick time check. Mystery Letter could be used with your younger students. So I like to do Mystery Letter with 1st graders. And for this project, what you do is your class picks a letter ahead of time. The other class picks a letter ahead of time, and you take turns asking yes or no questions. And if you have ever taught 1st grade, you know that asking yes or no questions is hard. It takes a lot of practice. But it's just kind of the same thing. You just go back and forth until you figure out the mystery letter that each class has chosen. You can also do this with mystery number, mystery animal. It could be anything. Mystery number works really well with 1st and even 2nd, because you can get into some of those more complicated math type questions. But it's just another kind of fun, easy way for kids to connect that still connects to your curriculum in some way. Grid Pals. So Flipgrid, I've heard a lot about Flipgrid in different sessions, so I imagine you guys have too. And basically, Flipgrid allows students to record themselves doing short videos, and you can use it for tons of different purposes in your classroom. For the kind of idea of connecting with others, you can do something called Grid Pals, which is where you fill out a form on the Flipgrid website, and they will match you with another classroom. Maybe you have a specific project that you want to connect with another class, or maybe you have a specific grade level or specific time frame. You can put that into the form, and they will do the work to find you a match. So then what you do is you have one grid, and your students are contributing, their students are contributing. You can set it up so that both people can moderate and watch videos and approve them in comments. But that can be a very engaging way for students to interact with each other, and it hits on those speaking and listening standards. And the kids they go bonkers for anything video. So my students did this 2 years ago. In a random library Facebook group, there was someone who posted who worked at an international school in Myanmar. So I jumped on that post and like, I want to connect with you. And so her 5th grade equivalent students and my 5th grade students interacted 3 different times. And we just kept it very simple. Like, what kinds of things do you like? What kinds of things do you read? What do you want to do when you get older? And each of our students posted on each of those questions, and we decided to open it up to commenting. And so we taught our students about appropriate commenting and things like that, and that allowed them a chance to practice those skills in a way that we could support them. We could have conversations of like, that comment really was not appropriate. I'm not going to approve it because that's going to make this other person upset. And we talked about how the students we were interacting with, English was not their first language, so we had to be careful about the way we phrase things and to keep things a little bit simpler than some of the slang that my students were using I wasn't sure was going to translate. So it became a huge learning opportunity, and one of the things that we did at the end was the teacher in Myanmar asked me if my students had email addresses, and our students do, but they're not turned on until middle school. So I had a conversation with the middle school principal, and I said, hey, I have 2 classes of students that have interacted with students in Myanmar. Would it be okay with you if I gave the teacher their email address, knowing that they're not going to have access till they go to 6th grade? Is that okay with you? And he's like, yeah, sure. So since this was 2 years ago, my students who are on the top are now 6th graders, and when they logged into their email the first time on the first day of 6th grade, many of them had emails from the students in Myanmar waiting for them. So it was just such a really cool way for them to connect. I still get kind of chills thinking about And that's something that those students would not have had that experience at home. That was something that me as the teacher set up and kind of set the path for them to be able to do that. Epic Pals is Epic is an awesome free app. If you're not using it, definitely look it up. It provides ebooks for students. It is completely free to set up a teacher account, and during the school day, students can access all of the ebooks for free. Where they make their money is when you ask parents to sign up so they can access them after school. And there's an educator named Sarah Malkow who's actually been at this conference in the past. I'm not sure if she's here this year, but she has set up a series of challenges called Epic Pals. And what she'll do is on her Twitter account, she will set up a challenge related to 2 of the books that are currently on Epic. So she'll pull a couple of books and she'll say, okay, have your students read these books and then have them do this. Some of my teachers like to use the Epic Pals challenges as a way from the table tasks during literacy centers, because they're always looking for meaningful ways for students to practice. And this is one where a lot of the work is done for you. She has printables you can print off if you wish, but it's kind of a nice way to connect with an app that hopefully you're not already using. And if you aren't, jot that one down. Seesaw. How many of you guys use Seesaw? Oh, not as many hands as I thought. So Seesaw could be a session in and of itself. In the past, there's been lots of Seesaw sessions at this conference. I didn't see as many this year. Seesaw is, in my opinion, the best portfolio tool for elementary. It has so many things you can do with Seesaw and have your students share. So kind of the basics of it is you set up your class in Seesaw, and then you have your parents sign up to receive notifications. So as you have your students post work, it goes to their parent or family member that's linked to their account. So in a sense, it's kind of like a closed social media world. And they've really improved the tools over the last couple of years, so you can have students take photos, do video too. But when we think about connecting beyond our walls, Seesaw, the way that it's designed, is to connect with parents so that your families can see what you are doing in your classroom. Like I have my son's first grade class. I'm linked to his, so whenever he posts something, I get a little notification. I can see what he did that day. But you can take it a step further, and what they call Seesaw blogs is basically just allowing which posts you select to go to a bigger audience. So the website and the tutorial explains everything, but kind of what you do is you say, okay, I want to set up a blog and I want it to be password protected. So I'm going to give that password only to this other teacher that I want to connect with. Maybe it's another teacher of your same grade level in a different building. Maybe it's a teacher across the country, doesn't matter. So you give them that password and they can access your blog, which is the post that you have selected to go there. So again, this becomes a way for students to share with a bigger audience. It becomes a way for them to practice things like commenting. It becomes a way for them to practice what are they writing as a caption for that photo? How are they sharing their learning? And it also is a great way, it just kind of becomes a portfolio of their work, so they can go back and look at their older work and then their newer things as well. So the basic account for Seesaw is free, but if you're not using it, it is a fantastic resource for elementary and definitely worth looking into. This kind of, the blog is kind of step 2, but if you're not using it, I definitely would highly recommend giving it a try. The next couple that I'm going to show you, Pen Pal Schools and Padico and ePals, are all different ways for students to be pen pals with another student. They're run by different companies, they have slightly different features, but that's kind of the gist of them. So Pen Pal Schools is a worldwide website. When you sign up for it, you're committing to an hour lesson per week, which I know for a lot of teachers is a big commitment. But you can connect with other teachers through their website, and you do specific projects and share them with each other. And Padico is created by the Kind Foundation, like the granola bars. And that one, you fill out your profile, They match you to another class, and then you kind of work with that other teacher to figure out, okay, what do we want to do? There's a whole list of different activities that they suggest. Like, for example, there's one on food, and there's one on literature. So you select the ones that are best for your students, and you work with that other teacher to agree on those tasks, and then you actually complete the activities within the Empatico website. ePals is similar, but ePals also has a feature where students can actually write to each other through the ePals website, and you can moderate that. So this is definitely something for your older students. I had a 5th grade teacher try it, and she really liked it. It was a lot of work for her to go through and moderate all of those emails back and forth between her students and the other students, but she said it was a really powerful thing. I saw this at another conference, and I took it to our secondary foreign language department, and they were all over it. So if you have friends who teach in secondary, this is an awesome website. One of our French teachers really ran with this, and so she connected with a class in France. So it gave her students an opportunity to write in French, and it gave the French students an opportunity to write in English, and they went back and forth several times over the course of the school year. But kind of the big idea that I want to just make sure that I'm reiterating is each of these projects can be really cool experiences, but in my mind, the best thing you can do is maybe use one of these experiences as a starting point and form a relationship with that other class. Interact with them often, share what you're reading, share what's going on in your community, and help those kids form a relationship. One of the coolest things that I did was we had a student who moved across the country. It was like October. So she moved to Washington and was devastated to move to Washington. And the teacher reached out to the parent and said, hey, if you want to give my email address to her new teacher, I would love to keep in contact with her. So the parent gave teacher in Pennsylvania's email address to the new teacher. The new teacher emailed her, and they had an idea, just the two of them, of what if we did a mystery Skype? And we don't tell her, and we don't tell the kids. And so we had this whole experience where we set up the mystery Skype, we prepped him ahead of time, we turned the cameras on, and the class in Pennsylvania looked at the screen and they were like, we'll call her Julie, that's Julie! And they were so excited, and the girl burst into tears because she was so happy. And this was a kiddo, there was some conversation of, is this gonna be the right thing for this kiddo or not? And the teachers decided that she would really benefit from this. So that mystery Skype was the start of weekly interactions between these two classes. And it was just a really powerful thing for both of them. They connected it to every different thing that they were doing in their classroom. They would play math games together virtually. They read the same chapter book read aloud in the spring, and so they would discuss the book. It really, really was a powerful thing, and it was the kind of thing that would not have been possible without the help of technology. So let me do a quick time check. So I have a Padlet here. Just make sure it's working. So one of the things that I think is the most powerful about coming to a conference like P&C is connecting with other people. So if you want to scan, or it's kind of a long Google address, I have a Padlet where basically you can list your Twitter handle if you wish, any ideas that you have. Kind of my call for you guys is to think of one thing that you heard today during this presentation that you want to try with your students, and then think of one thing that you want to share with a colleague. And I will kind of say too, the fun thing about this is once you start doing these, you'll see how excited the kids are and how much learning can really happen. That'll make you want to do more. So I'll leave that up there so people can kind of add a few ideas. Does anybody have any questions I can answer while people are filling out the Padlet? leave this up here. Feel free to stay, feel free to go. Thank you guys so much for coming. I appreciate it. Hopefully you got some ideas.
Presentation.
Yeah,
It's like my
thanks
head
for
is spinning right now. It's excellent.
Thank you.
So I'm a librarian.
Yes.
So I didn't ask this because it doesn't apply to everybody.
Right.
Are you on a fixed or flex schedule?
Fixed, but I do have a couple of empty periods.
Okay, because when you kept saying like, oh, I did this with this teacher, this with that
Yeah.
teacher, so is that what you use those periods to collaborate? Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, in our district it's the expectation that I use those empty periods to do that.
It is.
Yes.
Okay.
And I know that's not the case many places.
Yeah, well, see, I also do gifted as well, but it's funny because anytime the administration comes in and does a walk or whatever, and they see what's happening in the library, they're like, hey, you haven't seen that teacher.
Yeah.
Teachers are so stressed, so the solution is like, we're going to give you 5 minutes during a faculty meeting to show what you're showing, and of course they're like, what am I supposed to do with this?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fortunate that I do have a couple of empty periods, not a lot. Like I teach 39 classes in a 6-day cycle, so it
Okay.
works out to about 1, maybe 2 periods a day.
Okay.
So I try to schedule those
Right.
as much as I can.
Okay.
And one of the challenges that I have is like we're a growing district, so every year those periods go away as they have these sections.
Yeah.
So
That's
what
crazy.
I've found, like this is my 4th year, so what I've tried to do, I have 2 different buildings.
Okay.
I'm the 1st through 3rd in both. On each grade level team, I've tried to find somebody that's my mentor. I start with them, and then I kind of rely on them, like, okay, share this with your team, I'm gonna do it.
Great.
Which it takes time.
Sure.
But it's worked really well on some teams not so much. But
Now, during your fixed classes, if you're planning one of these, and you have like 5 homerooms in
Yes.
4th grade, like do you try to find
try.
like 4 or 5 different classes to connect with
I
and just
try.
schedule it during those times? Okay.
like for Global Read Aloud, thanks for coming.
Have a safe trip home.
Thank you too.
See ya.
So yeah, like for Global Read Aloud, I try to find a connection for all of my 1st and 2nd grade classes to do during library time.
Okay.
Sometimes things happen and it doesn't work out, but that's always my goal.
Okay.
Often what works best is I'll find another librarian, and so like this year there's a librarian in Texas who's like, okay, let's do 3 of your classes and 3 of mine, and who cares? The kids don't know that I've already connected to another Texas class, and this is the 1st grade too.
Sure. Yeah.
So sometimes it can be helpful to find librarians.
Okay.
Because they're in the same boat
Right.
you are.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So
okay.
that can help.
Okay. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. I used to live in Kingsburg.
Did you really?
Actually? I taught Bermuda Springs.
Okay.
It started in kindergarten like
Yes.
you. I was in kindergarten 3 years there, and then our family from under Erie, so that's what we had job. But yeah, I did 6 years kindergarten, 2 years 4th grade, and then I eventually ended up in the library. So I love it. I love it. It's just like the best of both worlds. And it gives you a better perspective. You've been in the classroom, you know what it's like.
Yeah.
So when I see a teacher like frantically looking for a book before the kids come, I'm like, go back to your
Oh,
room.
yeah,
I'll get you the
yeah.
book. Like, you know.
One of the
So-
things that's been trickiest for me is our district. We used to have collaborative planning time, like Wednesday afternoons at 3 o'clock.
okay.
So every teacher in the district would work from 3 to 4 on Wednesdays, which was awesome for me because I could pop from grade level to grade level and I knew they'd be there planning.
Yes.
We got rid of that,
Okay.
which has made it harder to make those connections because I had to schedule a meeting and
Yes,
from one building
yes.
to the other and this and that. But like that planning time is huge. Just like getting in, like, okay, what do you have coming up? Oh, let's do this together. Like I always frame it as what can I do to help you? And that is often my end.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
A lot of my teachers are trying to do passion projects, genius hour, things
Okay.
like that this year, and so that's like, what can I do to help this go smoothly for
Sure.
you in the class? So that's my end this year is really. A lot of teachers are doing some of this stuff on their own now, but the passion project is kind of the new thing that they want to try.
Sure. Good.
So
Very cool. Yeah, we actually, when I was teaching there, we came for the day and toured the kindergarten academy.
Yes. Well,
Remember
yeah,
loving
because
it.
Kathy, so your old superintendent,
Uh-huh.
Billy, his wife.
Yes. Yeah.
wife, Paul Healy, so his wife, Kathy,
Yes.
was the kindergarten principal.
Yes,
So there's that
yes,
connection.
at the time,
Yeah.
yep, she was the one that,
Yeah.
gave us a little tour.
Yeah.
It was just so wonderful being in a building of kindergarten.
Yeah. Well, and that building is unrecognizable now, because it was just renovated and expanded.
Oh, is it still a kindergarten academy?
It is, but district office is now the second floor.
Oh.
But they completely renovated it, and what used to be the front is now the back. Like, it's unrecognizable. Like, I stand where my old classroom was,
Yeah.
and I don't recognize anything around me because it's so different.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a unique. It was a fun place to work.
I bet. It felt that way being there. But that was back in the day when I thought I was going to teach kindergarten for the rest of my life. You know? And then I reached that wall that I'm like, okay, I went to my person, I don't hate my job. But I said, I just want to teach. Like I'm managing behaviors, and I have these great lessons, and I just want to teach them.
Do you have K to 5 now?
K to 4.
K to 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. I only have first to third now. I miss K. But
I know, I love that. I love them. Yeah.
yeah, the library. I've loved the transition to the library. And for my, I have 2 little kids. So
Me too. Yeah.
good.
Yeah. How old are your kids?
I have a first grader and then a 4-year-old.
Okay. Mine are 6 and 2. So one in kindergarten and then a 2-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I totally get that. And it's nice to have like we have the 6 in rotation and we have to take anything home, but as long as I get through day 1, I'm like, okay, I can do this. And then I have gifted too. I just a lot of times you just get in a project, you just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, the art teacher and myself have the gifted kids. And I do ELA, so we pull all the same kids.
Yeah.
I do ELA with them, he does math with them. So that's at least nice that I can just focus on.
Yeah.
Keep rolling.
I'm gonna unplug because it looks like
Yeah,
we're gonna-
absolutely.
That's an interesting way. I mean,
Isn't it? Yeah.
gotta do what they gotta do.
Exactly. But that takes any of my like extra periods because I have 5 classes a day,
Right.
40 minutes plus a prep. So
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's amazing how like those periods you have to
right.
Do you have an age?
I do. Yeah, we're very blessed that in each of our buildings we have full-time librarians in each building. We're all on one campus.
Okay.
At elementary, middle, and high school. And yeah, each of
Sorry, guys. At kindergarten, all of the other ages kind of help when we have a day. Environmental consultants.
What's up? You better hook your laptop in. Any issues here? Help me. Don't There's HDMI and VCI. Yes. Okay. Yeah. We'll be beat up. You know what's great? They keep the windows open, so you got the crowd really can see faces. It's a little dark. I don't like seeing faces. Here I'm sitting.